Picture this. In the year of our Lord 1984, a man by the name of Paul Fusco picks up an alien-looking puppet that he has in his home. He uses his puppet to annoy his friends and family. This simple hobby would unknowingly be the start of the 80s icon Gordon "ALF" Shumway. A few years of entertaining the people around him with the unnamed puppet, Paul figures his character is good enough to star in his own show. So he auditioned for a manager for the Jim Henson. You know, the creator of such cultural icons like Rizzo the Rat, Boppo the Bear, fucking Beaker. That sounds like a racial slur. Oh, and some of these lesser known characters. And what did the manager for the Jim Henson think of this unnamed puppet? Yeah, he wasn't that impressed. But after a complete improvised audition, the manager was eventually won over. He was convinced the puppet could star in his own show. Through the manager for Jim Henson, Paul met a man by the name of Tom Patchett, who would help Paul come up with the idea for the ALF sitcom. The concept for this ALF sitcom would have the star, ALF, who after crash landing in a suburban family's garage and now lives with them, goes on tiny day-to-day adventures while the family hides him from the US alien task force that will dissect him if they ever find him. Pretty lighthearted premise. But through the years of the show's airing, ALF would go through multiple controversies. That's really what I want to focus on. I want to see how each controversy changed the course of the show. There were problems with alcohol. There were problems with dangerous scenes. One event even led to a kid doing something pretty terrible with their cat. This was how the first episode of ALF went. So the show starts off like any other sitcom. The Tanner family, they're hanging out in their garage. Everything's good until they hear a radio signal go off.
It's the infrared radio band. I've locked into something in space.
And things start to get weird from there. Their lights go out, the ground shakes. Things get so bad that they have to crouch in the door. Why are they crouching Just leave. Why are you crouching in the doorway? As they're awkwardly crouching in the doorway, something crashes into the garage. And it's none other than the main character himself, Gordon "ALF" Shumway. Naturally, the Tanners are really freaked out, so their first instinct is to carry it into they're making all the wrong decisions. They put ALF on their coffee table and then they start talking about what they're gonna do with him. And while they're all discussing what they should do with him, ALF wakes up and makes a silly little joke. What a goofy little guy.
Oh, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, sure, why not?
And the first thing ALF does, naturally, when you crash into someone's garage is you demand that they help you fix your spaceship. You know, you go into someone's house, you demand orders. I mean, if it were me, I wouldn't let that shit slide. I'd probably stab him or something. And then Willie says, you know, we can't really fix your spaceship because it's night. I just feel like they're not reacting enough to the situation. Just go buy a light from the store. And then we get the first mention of ALF eating cats in the series.
Snack? What kind of a snack?
You got a cat?
And the Tanners are like, no, don't eat our cat. And then ALF says, fine, do you have any cans? And they go get him a can. And then he immediately chases their cat. And it's all played for laughs. The audience laughs and stuff. But if this series was going for any other tone, this would be a completely different scene. It cuts to the next morning and ALF is just laying in Kate's bed. What did they do? And from the scene, it's kind of apparent that ALF is going to be a troublemaker. He's going to be a little goofy guy. I don't think anyone else appreciates this because Kate's freaked out. He runs into the bathroom where Willie's like getting ready for the morning. It's just a nightmare for the Tanners already. Willie goes out, comforts Kate, goes back, and then proceeds to get naked in front of him and take a shower. The 80s must have been different, I guess. And then ALF, immediately after being told that they have nosy neighbors, opens the window and looks directly at their neighbor. This guy's a free spirit, you know, he's a Sigma. It's just more of that cheesy 80s sitcom, don't do this, and then does it anyway humor. There's a lot of that in this show. And then it cuts to the next day where Willie and ALF are in the garage. Willie is helping ALF fix his spaceship. Well, I say Willie's helping ALF. ALF is just kind of sitting there listening to the radio. And Willie's having trouble because he doesn't recognize any of these parts. You know, it makes sense. That's good on the writers. You know, obviously Willie wouldn't be able to fix an alien spaceship. And after that scene, I guess ALF just gave up on even looking like he's trying to help Willie. And then he just goes and hangs out with his kid. And that's really close, ALF. But that's like uncomfortably close to that kid. What are you doing? And after they get thirsty and Kate tells them no soda or nothing to eat before dinner.
I said no soda pop.
It's not soda pop, it's beer.
You're about out of Coors.
They end up drinking beer. Alf should not be allowed around children. That's all I'm gonna say. Somehow or another, they start talking about Melmac, Alf's planet. And Alf talks about Melmac in the past tense. And as it turns out, Alf's planet blew up due to a nuclear holocaust. Damn. Right after this, they hear a knock at the door, and it's a military man. And before they answer the door, Willie comes out and says, hey, I can't fix the spaceship. I don't have the proper parts. And so the Tanners are put into a situation where they have to decide whether or not they're gonna turn an Alf to this military man or not. And you know, it's an 80s sitcom. Of course, they're gonna say, yeah, you can stay with us. I honestly don't know what would happen if he did go with them, other than being dissected. To say that the show is liked would be an understatement. Alf was an immediate household name. The success of the show wasn't without its problems though. In the episode I just talked about, Alf opens a can of beer with a child, as you probably remember. It's pretty normal for a lot of pilot episodes to be a little more rough around the edges because they're still trying to figure out what exactly they want the characters to be like. Drinking beer, not that crazy. Alf would go on to drink beer throughout the entire first season, and this would inspire kids to drink beer themselves, you know, just go into their parents' liquor cabinet and pull some out. This was Alf's first controversy, but it would not be his last because in another episode, Alf tries to use an electric egg beater in the Tanner's bathtub to make a whirlpool.
You don't really think he'd put an electric...
No. No, even Alf knows better than to take an electric appliance into the bathtub.
So kids were inspired to take their own electric egg beaters to their own bathtubs and make their own whirlpools. That's awesome. The controversy was so bad they had to remove the scene entirely and pretend Alf just fell down.
Why was he carrying my mixer into the bathroom?
He said something about a whirling hot tub.
But the worst one by far, in my opinion, is when a kid tried to put a cat in the microwave because they wanted to eat cats like Alf did in the show. The 80s. The problem wasn't how Alf acted on his own. The problem was that the show wasn't even intended for children. Alf was a beer-guzzling cat eater from another planet, not Kermit the Frog. However, this didn't stop children from around the world from tuning into Alf every week. Because of the success that Alf had with the children, tons of Alf merchandise was put into production. T-shirts, alarm clocks, action figures, cups, plushies, comics, calendars, hats. Eminem was even wearing an Alf t-shirt on his 18th birthday. It was also because of this success with children that the writers had to strip back Alf's character entirely. No longer was he the beer-guzzling cat eater from another planet. He was now a cat eater from another planet. Yeah, they didn't remove the cat part. You'd think the show would get just so boring after this change. Like, there's not like anything. But the show actually got better, surprisingly. Here's an episode from season 2 called Somewhere Over the Rerun. The episode starts with Alf drilling holes into coconuts so that he can drink out of them. Typical Alf shenanigans. Willie walks in and talks to Alf about how his Gilligan's Island obsession is getting out of hand. I didn't even know what Gilligan's Island was before even watching this. I guess that shows how young I am. But Gilligan's Island is a show where a group of people are stuck on an island and it's like a sitcom. And after that, Alf joins Brian in the living room to watch Gilligan's Island. After their show is over, Alf talks to Willie about how boring life is in the Tanner house, and that how he wishes life were more like Gilligan's Island. Later that night, Alf continues to talk Willie's ear off about the show and how the fun never ends on Gilligan's Island. And in an effort to shut Alf up, Willie says, fine, we can build a little lagoon, okay? Just let us sleep. Alf takes this very seriously. Willie and Kate wake up to realize that their water isn't running. They test the faucet. Kate tested it in the bathroom. It doesn't work. Why? And they hear Alf's voice from outside asking them to shut it off. Willie goes into the backyard only to fall in a large lagoon Alf dug in their yard. And Alf decides to try to pin this on Willie, saying that he agreed to let him build a lagoon. And we get this glorious quote.
I said we'd build a little lagoon, not the great Tanner Reef.
It'd be an understatement to say Kate and Willie were upset. So they make Alf fill in the large hole of water that he dug in their backyard. Alf continues filling the hole for the rest of the day, and by night, he falls asleep and enters Gilligan's Island in his dream. He watches the characters from the show do their little shenanigans, he has a laugh, and after, he joins them for lunch. And sort of as a reversal to what Alf was saying, the characters talk about how boring life is on the island. And then they force Alf to fill in land for a golf course, I guess. I don't really know where that I don't know why they needed to make him fill in a hole in this scene too. Also, there was a really funny joke. I want to include that.
It's almost time for our favorite TV show.
You have a TV?
Oh, yeah. I rigged one up using some bamboo, a couple of coconut shells, and a 19-inch picture tube that washed up on the shore.
So Alf stays behind to dig, and the island cast sits around a TV to watch a show called The Adventures of the Tanner Family. The island cast talks about how much they would love to live a life like the Tanners. And again, it's sort of a reversal of what Alf was saying. Insert sitcom dream sequence trope, and Alf has a new appreciation for his life with the Tanners. As the show continued running, the writers started to run out of things to do with Alf while being restricted to the Tanner household. Since, the whole premise of the show was that Alf couldn't leave because he doesn't want to get dissected. They couldn't just have a beach or a road trip episode. No, everything had to be in the Tanner house. On top of the lack of ideas, each episode was a nightmare to produce. The entire set had to have these massive holes in the floor so the puppeteers could puppeteer. Underneath the trapdoors and holes on the set floor, Fusco would be assisted by a second puppeteer, Lisa Buckley, who was responsible for controlling the character's left hand. From off-screen, a third puppeteer, Bob Fabiano, sorry, what a tragic name, this guy must have had fun in high school, would operate his eyes and other facial features via remote control. On top of the lack of ideas and grim work hours, the ratings for the show plummeted. Nobody cared about Alf anymore. The show had gotten so stale. Every episode started with the Tanner house and ended with the Tanner house. Luckily, the writers had a plan to potentially spice up the entire series. But before I talk about any of that, let's see what an episode of Alf looked like while the writers had no ideas, the ratings were down, and everyone hated each other. This episode is called I Gotta Be Me. The episode starts with a family playing Monopoly, but their game is interrupted by the sound of Lynn and her boyfriend arriving at the house. I did skip pretty far. This is season 4, so yeah, Lynn is 19 now. She has a boyfriend. That's all cool. Lynn and her boyfriend walk through the door, and there's a really awesome scene that's awesome and not awkward at all.
Good night.
And then Alf says something pretty crazy, and nobody acknowledges it.
Oh, you never kissed me like that.
The next night, Lynn comes home and tells her mom she went a weekend at a ski resort for 2, and she wants to invite her boyfriend. Lynn and her mom argue. She brings up the fact that she's 19. Her mom brings up the fact that you're under my roof. It's typical family drama stuff. And at the end of the argument, Lynn says that she's gonna go anyway. Alf is creepy again.
Our little girl's growing up. It seems just like yesterday she was wearing her first training bra.
Lynn talks to Willie about how she can't promise her mom she won't go skiing with Robert. Alf is weird again and wants Lynn's room or something. I don't know. Lynn and Robert leave, and this is probably more awkward than the other scene. What is this? The weekend passes, all the anger dies down, and Lynn comes home. And then Alf is creepy once again. That's awesome.
How was your trip?
Yeah, how'd you make out?
Lynn and her parents get to talking about how her trip was, and Lynn mentions that she and Robert talked about living together, and her parents do not take this well. They get a little upset at her for it. Though it's good that even in an 80s sitcom, they know moving in with your partner at 19 is a horrible idea. Lynn and her parents argue again, and she goes to Robert's house. Lynn tells Robert that she is ready to move in with him, and my guy looks ecstatic. This is the face of a man that cannot wait to start his life with her. Then Lynn decides after 1 minute that she doesn't want to move out. She's going at breakneck speed. Lynn and her mom talk one more time about the situation, and it's surprisingly very heartfelt. Like, this talk was actually done very well. This episode actually wasn't too bad for being so late in the series. Well, if you ignore the creepy stuff. On March 24th, 1990, an infamous episode of ALF would air. It was unknown to the showrunners at the time, but this would be ALF's last adventure with the Tanner family. The show had been canceled and would leave viewers on a 6-year-long cliffhanger, only to be resolved by the straight-to-TV movie Project ALF, which was, it didn't do the best. No. Now, the main reason the show was canceled was something I talked about earlier. They just ran out of things to do with ALF in the Tanner house. And again, everyone hated working on the show. Paul Fusco, the creator and voice actor for ALF, would take lines from the other characters and write them for his character. That sounds like a nightmare. The person who hated working on ALF the most, however, was the actor for Willie Tanner, Max Wright. He described working on the show as hard work and very grim. There were rumors that Max once got so angry, he started choking out the ALF puppet, and he said, "We're all puppeteers." So angry. And also that he just walked off set on the last day of filming ALF. He just got in his car and left without saying goodbye to anyone. It's really interesting to watch the show with this context, because any scene where Willie is mad at ALF, that is probably genuine rage. But all good or mediocre things must come to an end. Here's how the final episode of ALF went. The episode starts with ALF messing with Willie's radio. ALF is using the radio because he wants to do some kind of stupid idea. I don't know. And then Willie walks in and tells ALF that what he's doing is strange and unusual. It's not gonna work. Yeah, a lot of ALF episodes started like that. But then the same beeping that was heard in the first episode plays through the radio.
What's that?
And ALF knows it's Melmacian. He figures someone is trying to contact him. And as it turns out, he's right. ALF's friends bought a new planet and they want to pick up ALF and take him there. And then Kate is just rude for some reason.
I wouldn't want to get your hopes up.
I certainly don't need to decode that.
ALF is conflicted because whether he chooses to go or not, he's gonna lose something. But his friends are gonna pass by the planet in the next day, so he has to make the decision before then. And then we cut to the alien task force who is monitoring the signal. Apparently they got the same signal that ALF did. They know there's an alien signal coming from space and they'll continue to investigate. Then we cut to ALF and Brian reminiscing on old memories in the attic. It's a pretty nice scene.
Can I go with you?
Come on, Brian. You've got a life full of accomplishments ahead of you. You'll meet people. You'll fall in love. She'll break your heart. You'll find somebody better. You'll have children. They'll break your heart. Eventually, you'll grow old and die.
ALF's friends give him coordinates to a landing spot on the edge of town, and his friends only have enough fuel to pass once, so this is their only chance. ALF, after some conflict, decides that he will go with his friends on the new planet. And it's kind of sad because these characters have been together for 4 years. Even though they've had their problems every now and then, they're still family. Regardless of what happens in this episode, it will be the last time ALF interacts with the Tanners. And it's still sad. We cut back to the alien task force and they know about the signal that ALF sent from Earth. And they get to work cracking that signal. ALF and the Tanners sit around the table for a going away party. And they all give little speeches and they give ALF a funny little stick. And then Kate is mean again for some random reason.
Been together for, what, 10 years?
Going on 4.
But it's finally time to go to the landing site. Kate gives ALF a hug. Do you hate him or like him? Pick one. ALF looks at the house one last time before walking out the door. The alien task force cracked the signal and they plan to head to the same coordinates that the Tanners are going to. The Tanners finally arrive to the landing site, but they aren't alone. Then the Tanners walk ALF and his stuff to the field. The ship hovers over them as they say their last goodbyes. As the ship is about to pick up ALF, it's interrupted by the alien task force who surround ALF, leaving the show on a cliffhanger. With a character as large as ALF was in his prime, you'd think there would be attempts to revive the character, and you'd be right. There was not one, but 2 animated series of ALF. The first animated series, taking place on Melmac, was sort of a prequel to ALF. The show would have ALF going on little adventures while not being restricted to the Tanner household, because it's Melmac. he can go out and live among his kind. The second animated series, ALF Tales, put the character into well-known stories like Robin Hood. You can probably see why these weren't well received. There was also an entire talk show called ALF's Hit Talk Show. Guess what it wasn't? After all of these shows in the sitcom, ALF sort of faded into obscurity. He'd only make appearances in other shows and advertisements. However, there's another big reason that if they wanted to revive ALF, they probably couldn't. In 2010, footage leaked from the set of ALF. In the footage, we see ALF making multiple sexual comments and uncomfortable jokes towards the women actresses. Not only that, but in another clip, we see ALF laying in Lynn's bed while saying the N-word. And no, I'm not trying to cancel a puppet. I'm just saying that just because you used a puppet to say things through, it still doesn't make it okay. It's a contributing factor to why ALF may never come back fully.